at this time?
My name is Chen Cheng-Yan. I live in 10 Central Drive, Chelmsford. And we have the concern about our son because we just moved from Littleton Road to Central Drive. So he's fourth grader, and we were hoping that, I think we sent a lot of email to the
Yes.
superintendent and to everyone of just like address our concern. Because our main concern is that he's in the ALL program, so we're concerned about his education. I don't want to be like stopped or interrupted. So we request the superintendent at the very beginning saying that can he stay to finish it at Bayern the last year. And we never got a response from superintendent. And until last week, we got a phone call from the secretary saying that superintendent over the phone to my wife and saying that, oh, he needs to transfer. It's a policy. So we want to set up a short meeting with superintendent or even a phone call. We never got a response. And until last Wednesday, I contacted DOE. They have some suggestions, and I need to contact the board members to address our concern. So I sent the email again to the secretary, and the secretary then immediately responds saying that his last day is last Friday, so he needs to transfer no matter what. But by that time, I didn't even update my official address yet, and she just told us we need to transfer my son from one school to another. I think the superintendent owes us an explanation. Because I don't know, I know he's very busy, and he can just give us 3 minutes phone call and an email. Just let us know, because the policy, the budgeting, anything. We just want to hear something from superintendent, not just the secretary.
Yeah.
Always give us a hard time. And she threatened my wife saying that you cannot appeal because that's the final decision from superintendent. Even though meeting with him, won't change his mind. I don't know what caused that issue. It's so hard to contact the superintendent. That's very disappointing as a parent, as a resident in this town. And I have all the proof email list. If anyone want to take a minute, just take a look. So,
I'm sorry, could you just explain what that is? Emails of what?
there's an email to send it to
Right.
superintendent,
Oh, okay.
send it to the secretary, and then, but because she just over the phone, orally talking to us. And we also found there's one policy which against her policy that she told us it's a town policy. You have to transfer. There's no way he can stay in the same school. But we found that's under the committee's website saying that there's a policy, as long as the parents are committed to provide the transportation, the kids can attend it to the out of attending district school. So which means it's against her policy. So I don't know who can answer this. So that's why I try to reach out any resource I can help us out. We just need explanation. That's all we care about.
Yeah, that's.
So,
Okay, well, I appreciate you making your presentation, and if you'd like to continue, we can hear it. Without the superintendent being here, I don't think it'd be appropriate for us to comment.
I understand.
But
we just
what we
try
can
to
tell you
address-
is that we will address the issue with him and make sure that he gets back to you.
I know it's too
we
late,
all got it.
but
What's,
we'll still try to make sure everybody aware of this as a parent, as the town resident.
Right.
We care about all our children. We want them to have a better service, not just being kicking around. Because now I just feels like until the end, I like the South Road principal and all the staff. And then the two schools, Bayern and South Road, they're very nice. but the staff in this office make us feel really frustrated. That's my key concern I want to address to all of you to be aware of it. Because I think you guys you want to provide the best service to everyone, to every kid, every children. So,
Sir, you're absolutely correct, sir, and I can promise you that this board will look into it, give us an opportunity to speak with the superintendent,
Yeah.
and I give you my word, we're going to get back to you with a prompt answer and at least a discussion, sir.
Thank you very much.
I can assure you that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Speakers are a little
Yeah,
high.
getting some feedback.
She can hear us. The speakers are just a little feedback. Maybe it's Sal's booming voice. Who knows?
Okay. All right, do we have good news?
We do. Do you want to do the student report first?
Oh, sure. We should add that.
I guess, yeah, that would be good.
So I keep
That's
doing the
fine.
Same thing.
That's fine. So
All
we'll
right.
start off with
Awesome.
the student representatives.
Whichever one of you would like to kick off, it would be fine.
I'll go first. All right. So I will be handling upcoming events at Chelmsford High School right now. So on Thursday, we have an open house for all grades. Freshman parents are supposed to report there at 6 p.m. And it's going to start at 6:40, I believe. 6:30, 6:40. And after that, I believe all the other parents, juniors, seniors, and sophomores are also supposed to attend, their parents as well. So that's Thursday. And after that, on October 19th at 7 p.m., we also have a substance abuse program. And somebody's going to be coming into the PAC and talking about drug abuse and how it impacts families and people all across the district. So that's October 19th at 7 p.m. That's for parents, but kids as well. If they know somebody dealing with it, if they're dealing with it themselves, I think it's just a great resource. I've actually gone to one of those drug abuse programs and mental health programs at the PAC before, and they really provide great information. So I think if people are struggling with something like that or just want to know more about drug abuse, they should definitely go check it out.
All right, I'll be doing the non-events. So one, we have an eco club at school, and they're looking to start a compost program so that they'd start like growing a sustainable garden at the high school. They start growing a sustainable garden at the high school, and our head food advisor person, they're nationally certified. So if we do grow food at CHS, we can use that to make our lunches, which is really cool, really fresh food. So the Eco Club was looking for ideas and suggestions about like what do you want do like should we grow, like how do we go about this? So if anybody has any suggestions, you could.
Yeah, they were talking
Come
about
up.
making a compost bin and also creating a garden on the side of the school as well.
Which
So
would be cool.
Where?
I don't know specifically where. Principal Murray told us that it was supposed to be off of the side of the school, though.
Yeah.
Lots of sides of that.
Yeah,
We'll find it.
too many.
We'll figure it out. And we have Spirit Week's coming up, November
Yeah,
Thanksgiving week, which will be a blast. Seniors are gonna win. I hope. We've lost
we've lost
a
every
lot.
Class of 2017 isn't doing too
We're
well.
struggling.
So
Think
hopefully-
positively.
Yeah, I know.
I hope we'll do better this year. We have new murals on the second and third floors, which is good. Getting rid of the old ones that have been there for a really, really long time.
Yeah, I don't know when they're gonna start painting them, but I know they completely whitewashed them over the summer, and they're starting. They're thinking about painting them, I believe, sometime within the next couple weeks. So hopefully, you know, the old 1970s, 1980s murals are out, and it's gonna be cool to see some new CHS art students perform their work on the walls.
Their new skills.
Yeah, you're
That-
our replacements. It's
skills.
over.
Yeah.
I have a request.
Would you like a painting of
If you could,
yourself?
if you,
Wow.
We can do that.
We could. I mean,
oh. New energy to the new, I've taken pictures of all the murals, including the ones that are new, at least as far along as they are. I don't know the names of any of the people, and even, I have most of the old ones in terms of the people that painted it, but Eric Hoover and Paula Brown left before I got some of the names. If you could get the names of the people doing the artwork,
Yeah.
it would be good, because
Good.
the pictures are on the alumni site, and they could identify the kids and give them some recognition if I could get the names.
I know
Okay.
So-
Emily Hogan.
Emily Hogan did one of them. But
Yeah.
it'd be better if we gave you a
Yeah,
list.
just match
Yeah.
up, the
Yeah.
name with the
Mural.
picture, okay?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can do
Because,
that.
it's important. Once was a time when you couldn't even put tape on the pictures, never mind paint over them. So this is very controversial for some people, not me.
Oh, no.
But anyway, no,
I think it's good to go.
yeah.
You know,
the
get a
old
new
and with the
feel.
new.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. So anyway, any help, or if you could talk to somebody in the art department. and get
It's
that-
easier when you're new.
Now on your own. Sorry.
He wasn't pointing at you, Mike.
Well, it's even more controversial than that, because people who go to art school don't think that the other person or people are any good. They're good, but the other people aren't good. So if you leave their picture up and take my picture down, it's not good. It's very controversial. So it's great. But if you could speak to one of the art teachers and see if they could get
Yeah, for
names
sure.
of people. That's great. Sorry.
That would be
Yeah,
fun.
no
No,
problem.
of course.
Nice job.
And one more thing, Coach Fletcher recently passed away, and his funeral was Saturday morning. And we heard from the Dolan Funeral Home, who held his funeral, that this was the biggest funeral turnout that they've seen in town, which is amazing. 3,400 people, which is amazing.
Took 5 hours to get through the line. 5 hours.
It definitely impacted the school. You
It brought us
immediately
yeah.
that day. It was kind of a downer in the atmosphere.
Well, it shows
It shows
community
the community
commitment.
that we
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
Which
I
is
thought it was a great
amazing.
sense of community throughout the public schools, and I was reading a bunch of the Facebook posts online,
Yeah.
Chelmsford Town Report,
A lot of the
Chelmsford News.
previously graduated students came back for the
Yeah.
funeral,
Yeah,
which was
I think it was just
really amazing.
a terrible thing to happen, but it was a great sense
Exactly.
of community.
You know, I coached Jason, and I had the pleasure of coaching with Jason. And his father was my football coach, assistant, and head coach. And I will tell you, speaking for myself, there could be no finer family, there could be no finer man. His dedication to children, his dedication to young adults, his dedication to the quality of life lessons that his kids took in on a daily basis is immeasurable. And this town is a little less stronger than it was a week ago. So all I can tell you on behalf of my family, on behalf of the athletics at Chelmsford High School, we certainly will miss Jason, and we pray for his family on a daily basis. His father is an icon in this community, in the state, and I pray for their family. I pray for Mrs. Fletcher, and can only say the best for them.
Well said. I just wanted to add one other thing to good news. Some of you probably didn't see it. I begin my day by reading the Globe. And in the Tuesday Stories section, the lead story is on one of our grads. It's Peter Reynolds. Peter and Paul have been in the business of writing children's books and doing films and a bunch of projects related to their creative minds. And it's a 2-page story, and the only thing that bothers me is I had him in 8th grade, and he's now 55, so
Oh my God.
that puts me somewhere above 55. But I think it's great when we see, students. Unfortunately, I don't think it said anything about Chelmsford, but we got to get our alumni to mention it every time they're in the paper. But it's pretty neat stuff to have our grads in the front page of the paper. Like
And
that.
they've stayed involved. They've donated books for charity events. They had a couple of
Spelling bee.
exactly yeah.
Well, one of them spoke at graduation a few years ago too, so they have maintained contact. But they also have their books. For those that don't know, the Alumni Association has in the Learning Center or the library has walls with the covers of books that were published by our graduates, and he has several his book's in there. So we have everything. We have technical books written by Mark Maybury, who is the head scientist for the Air Force. Don't bother to take them out because you won't understand anything except his name, but they're pretty impressive. So anyway, so the way that works, there are at least 2 copies up there, one for posterity and one for circulation. So if you're ever up there, take a look. We've had to expand to new walls because there are so many publications by our grads.
Were they the ones who dedicated the book to the art teachers at Chelmsford High School too?
I don't know.
I
I
believe they
believe I
were.
heard something about that. I don't know whether it was them or not.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. So just so to let the committee know, Dr. Lang will be here soon. He's just finishing up a meeting down at the town. So for good news, though, Chelmsford is participating with the U.S. Department of State, which was funded by an international exchange program. This is coming from UMass Lowell, and what will happen is 22 middle school and high school teachers from around the world will be coming to the UMass Lowell, and these teachers will partner with our Chelmsford teachers, and they'll be working together as co-teachers in the classroom. So there's 22 teachers total, and we're sharing them with Andover. This is a grant for UMass Lowell. It's going to be wonderful. We've already talked to our teachers. They're going to be primarily focused in STEM and world languages. However, depending on what their background is, we can even pair them up with possibly an ELA teacher, social studies, depending on what their piece is. So AJ Angulo from UMass Lowell has reached out to us, and this was just a great opportunity, which was welcomed by all staff. Tonight, we have our new football coach for tonight, and his name is David Kaiser. He'll be with us here to talk a little bit about himself, introduce himself, and you can ask him questions. He's come from Nichols College, where he was the associate head coach and offensive coordinator, as well as the recruiting coordinator. And prior to that, he was at Worcester Polytech, where he was the offensive coordinator, PE instructor, and also the recruiting coordinator. When I looked at some of his documents, he said he was drawn to Chelmsford for the strong programming that we had here and the athletics and the collaboration. So I'm going to welcome you to come on up. Just make sure that you go to one of the seats where there's a speaker and you can introduce yourself.
How you doing? Dave Kaiser, head football coach. Thanks for having me this evening. I do have a packet for everybody, just to give you an idea of, what our program stands for, give you an idea of where I come from and things that, I hold true to my heart. So I'll just pass these down to you folks.
Perfect amount.
Do you folks have any questions for me, just to
Yeah,
get things going a little bit?
And you're also employed as a I hate to use that term, but it's so much easier than the alternatives. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that fits in with your philosophy and everything?
Sure. I'm in the the SAP program at the school. We have about 10, 11 students, in our classroom within the day. They come in for study skills, things of that nature. It's a good opportunity for me. I'm with the football team a lot, athletes. It's a good opportunity to have young men and women who aren't athletes to kind of see what they're going through, what their day's like, to help them in any way I can. And it really has been a great experience thus far. I mean, the people that I work with, Courtney Farrell and Kathy Peluso, what a great team it is, and that's what football is, and that's what this is. It's a team and working together and making sure we have a common goal.
Sometimes when people come to the committee, they have a list of things that they need.
We're waiting
Just the
for you.
way it is. You may not want to begin that way, but seriously, is there anything in terms of facilities, staffing, policy, or anything else that you think we ought to know about and maybe address at some point?
Right now, to be honest, no. I like where we are. Our facilities, the weight room, It's an old weight room, but you know what? It's work, and I like going in there with the kids, and I know everyone wants a new weight room, but, for right now, obviously, I think it gets the job done, and I know there's been some talk, about improving it, which is great. And I'm just so lucky, to be able to work for, Scott Moreau and Mr. Murray, and having an athletic teamwork between administrators. It really is a great place to be. So, to be honest with you, I'm in my first year. I'm not going to, rock the boat at all. I just like where we are right now.
Your experience with recruiting was mentioned a couple times. What do you see a role in terms of working with juniors and seniors to get them where they want to go?
Absolutely. I think that, I call it reverse recruiting. Now, instead of calling a young man and talking to his parents, I'm calling college coaches and making sure that our kids are on, the college's radar. And the big thing, communication between me and the seniors, especially now, that we're in the fall. This is a key point now where our kids have to be seen. We have practice on Saturday. I tell them they're excused. If you want to go to a football game or visit a campus, that's the time to go, and I think that's important. We had a young man go to Central Connecticut yesterday, missed practice, and there's certain things that, I hold true. If you're going to miss a practice, there's going to be a reason, and, academics is first and foremost and always will be a part of our program. For a young man to come to me and say, Coach, I won't be at practice because I'm, going to take an investment in my future, that's okay by me, without question.
Anybody else have questions? I've been kind of dominating here.
That's okay, you're the chairman. Coach, I'd like to talk, I'd like for you to explain a little bit about something that hasn't really been done in the past when it comes to the students and their study hall classes. That's mandatory. Just from my lens that I look through, it's much different. There's a different focus. And I find it exciting. And could you elaborate on this and let everybody out in the town of Chelmsford know why it's different today?
Sure. I think, first and foremost, our biggest accomplishment won't be holding a trophy at the end of the season. Our biggest accomplishment will be 15 years down the road when we see these men come back and excel in whatever they're doing. And that excites me, and I think we've got academically, I have a vision. It started with our study hall. Every 2 times a week, we have a 45-minute to an hour study hall program that the kids have to go to before practice. I think it's important because, first of all, a young man's tired after practice, so it's good to get their head in there before they're, hitting each other a little bit in the head and make sure that their academics are up to date. The second process now is every 2 weeks we do a progress report for our football players, and that includes, how you doing? That includes, they have to get every teacher to sign it. I want to know their grade, their class participation, if they've been tardy. I just added a new feature, conduct. I want to make sure that, our football players are doing the right thing in class. They're being the model for our community. And our third step now is once I get, this is the second progress report I'm going to get. Once I get those, now we're going to identify maybe some problem areas. So any student athlete or football player that's under a B- will meet with me every Monday, and we're going to go over, he's going to have to now fill out a calendar of assignments that are due, tests, what day the tests are on. So now in study hall, I can have a better understanding of what they're trying to do. And the last step now is, and I'm sorry for going so fast, the last step is helping each other. If a young man's having trouble in class, listen, we've got some great student athletes in our football program. They're going to start to help each other. And we were in study hall yesterday, and I got excited. We had, 3 of our football players helping one of our juniors out who had a test and was having a tough time. And it was just great to see them helping each other, and that's what it's all about, And when I first took the job, we want to win everywhere. We want to win on the field, but more importantly, we want to win in the classroom. We want to win in the community, and we're going to compete, and it's going to be teamwork, and that's how we're going to get through everything in life. So,
I think it's interesting that coaches or clubs, anybody of authority, want to talk about accountability. And all I can tell you is firsthand that this gentleman in front of us holds these young men accountable. And sometimes it smarts a little bit, it hurts. And I'd like you to just talk about the level of accountability you've had and how you hold our young men accountable, because that's important, Coach.
Sure. I think going back to the progress reports, for instance, they have to have their progress report in by noon on Friday. And if we don't have it by noon on Friday, they lose playing time. And unfortunately, we had a situation in the last game where we had, two gentlemen, one passed it in at 1:30, one passed it in at the end of the day. One of them was a starter. He was on a kickoff and kickoff return. He didn't start the game. Another young man unfortunately, he was a senior. He gave it to me. He was the one that gave it to me after school. He was going to start that night, and he didn't start at his position. Those are the lessons that they hurt sometimes, but they'll remember those lessons going down the road. How can we, as coaches, trust a young man to make a big play on 4th and 1 or what have you if they can't do the little things right? And I'm a big proponent of the little things win ball games, and that's everywhere. That's just not on the football field. So it's important to me, accountability. They are going to be held accountable. I will sacrifice wins to run this program the right way, 100% of the time.
I just wanted to say I never want a football coach to apologize for speaking at a high tempo. I want high tempo coaches, so I do appreciate that. And I want to say that I appreciate standards, and I hope you bring a good culture. Culture is really important in any kind of team, whether it's the military or football. I will say I had a football career. It was like 3 games, and I was a defensive end, and I got pancaked pretty much the entire time. So it was a short-lived career, but I always remembered my football coaches. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
I don't know anything about football.
Coach, I just want to thank you for coming in front of the board today. A lot of people have been hearing about your new processes and procedures. They've been interested, and I have to tell you a little bit that maybe a little skeptical, because maybe things were said in the past that didn't come to fruition. But all I can say is, on behalf of one of the coaches, one of the unpaid coaches for 12 years, I can tell you that I'm thoroughly impressed. Our committee should be proud to have a leader in place that holds our children accountable, that places academics first and winning second. And more than anything, the culture that he's creating, one of camaraderie, respect, and community service. I think it was just last week, Coach, or maybe 2 Sundays ago, that you took the entire football team down to, and I apologize, sir, if you want to talk about it a little bit, what did you do for community service with the entire team?
Sure, went down to the library for the book sale, and our kids came in, and they had the opportunity to help out and clean up the whole area, put the books away, stack them, and it was a great experience. We had a great time. The kids had fun, and they got to interact with the people at the library, and it was just a great experience, and they enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it. I like doing those things. I think it's an opportunity for our kids to understand where they come from, and to get to where they're going, they got to know where they come from, and I think that's so true in life. So we're going to continue to do those things, and if anyone has any ideas or anything, please let me know, because I'm always into getting our guys to do more things.
I have some PTOs that are going to want to meet you.
Yeah.
A couple of them.
Well, I think what's also important when you talk about the PTOs and you talk about, the rest of our community in relation to sports, because we're talking to the head football coach, I just also want, for the very first time, our head football coach has not only reached out to parents that their children aren't in the high school. We're talking that this gentleman's been in McCarthy, been in Parker, been at Papuana meetings, been at the lower levels of Papuana, held clinics for those for the first time, non-paying clinics that he's donated his time, and certainly some of the other coaches on the team have donated their time. So all I can tell you is this. I've been playing sports for a very long time. I've been in this community for 40 years. It's very, very exciting today to see a different atmosphere out there, and our coach holding people accountable. So, Coach, thank you. Thank you very much for holding our kids accountable, and thank you for being a great role model, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Better win on Thanksgiving.
Slow down, John. Slow down.
Hey, expecting a win is not a big thing.
Got to win next week.
And we'll start, Bill Belichick.
New business. Presentation.
Sure. First item on the evening agenda this evening at a new business is the individuals from Durham Whittier, Michelle and Brad, to come back up. We had indicated at the October 4th school committee meeting what we would do is actually kind of a precursor to the report that will be provided at town meeting later in October, just to update the school committee on the status of the review, kind of where we are timeline-wise with the process. And then, again, this is kind of a precursor for town meeting. So if there are different items or areas that come up that need to be flushed out a little bit further, well, we have 2 weeks to do so. We thought this would be a good time to do that. So I would turn it over to Brad and Michelle. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I think a lot of our focused discussion over the last number of meetings has been really on the full-day K implementation for the fall of 17. But we don't want to lose sight of that just being one of the components of the overarching plan. So if you wouldn't mind maybe kind of sharing the status update with us and just engaging in some dialogue if there are things that we want to tweak going into town meeting.
Dive right in.
Are we doing the whole presentation over? I'm asking.
The what?
The whole presentation?
Tonight's?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Little different.
yes.
A little different?
Oh,
Okay.
this is the different. This is the overarching one.
Yes. Shaking it up a little for you.
All right.
So tonight, we're just going to focus on these three items: the facilities assessment, implementation of the full-day kindergarten, and the master plan options. So starting with facility assessment, so far to date, we have done our initial reports. We've sent them to the district for review. We're looking at prioritizing those needs for capital improvements, and they will be going out for cost estimation once the prioritization is done. And then you'll be receiving that full report of the existing facilities assessments. So just a look back at where we were. This is the graph that we showed you a while ago, just looks at the conditions of the buildings and compares them to each other. Red indicating needs, and under the fire protection systems, you'll see that most of the buildings don't have fire protection, and that's why those are red. It doesn't exist. There are other needs, such as accessibility. So if you read across the line, you'll see that that also has red dots across those lines. And if you read top to bottom, you'll see from each of the schools: Byam Center, Harrington, South Row, McCarthy Parker, the high school, and then also Westlands, and 101 Mill Road was another one of the buildings that we actually looked at the assessments for. So the columns, I'm sorry.
I think just explain the where you have two dots
Yep.
and what that means.
So if you look at the columns going top to bottom, you'll also see where the needs are for each of the buildings. In some of these, you'll see that the box actually has two dots. One might be green and orange, or green and red, and that would be where some of the systems have been updated but not completely. So for example, in mechanical systems, or electrical systems, you may have replaced certain components, but not the overall distribution system.
So where you may have, for example, done an accelerated repair program, which only has a limited scope of boiler room proper, the boilers and everything might be, brand new and perfectly up to snuff, but because when you went through that program, it didn't address all of the distribution system needs, so we kind of have the heart of it, but, the arteries and the veins aren't necessarily all up to snuff. So that's what those two dots represent.
So boilers are brand new, but unit ventilators are 50 years old. Moving forward into the implementation of full-day kindergarten, we looked at several different options for full-day kindergarten, including adding modulars to each of the buildings and not adding modulars at all. So we looked at 6 different options, and after several rounds with both the working group as well as this committee, it was determined that option A, which provided 3 modulars at each of the school buildings, disconnected at each of those elementary school buildings with the exception of Center School, was the preferred option. So 12 modulars in total, 3 of them connected to the Center School and the rest detached. That would provide the opportunity for full-day kindergarten at each of those schools and allow children to stay within their district. for each of those elementary schools. And we provided options, taking a pass at how each of those modular buildings would look on each of the sites. And you could see that the modular buildings would be laid out, and then in some cases, some changes to the traffic pattern or increase in the parking areas where we're taking on some of the parking. So on your left is Byam, Harrington. We looked at South Row, and then at Center School, we actually looked at attaching those modulars to the existing building and routing the traffic pattern around the new connected building. What do modulars look like? So they could look like this, or they could look like this, which is an example of modular building that we had done in Needham for the Mitchell Elementary School. Also in Needham, this is another pass at modulars. These were done at the Newman School. And you would have your choice of renting the modulars, purchasing used modulars, or purchasing used modulars or renting them for the time being that you need them. And those packages change daily, what's out there and available. The inside of modulars look like classrooms. They can be anything that you want them to look like. They're fitted out specifically for your needs. And on the right-hand side, on the upper right, you can see those are the modulars that were at Newman School in Needham. And lower left is also in Needham as well. The timeline for putting these in, if you start today and advertise for your designers, we're estimating that you could have modulars in place by the start of school next year.
It's tight schedule.
And this is based on getting into the queue for modular construction. They have opening queues, they put everybody in, and then most of the schools are looking for build-outs starting June, as soon as kids get out of school, and then they build until the day school starts.
Is it doable? Is it tight or is it impossible? I guess what I'm asking. Or is
I think he said tight, but possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's tight. We've been talking with you for a while now, saying that we need to push this forward. We understand the constraints that you're under, and I think that there's some ways to go about improving the schedule. Potentially dependent upon what direction everybody decides to take, what type of modulars we may be able to go and expedite. The biggest thing here is getting the production of the modulars rolling, and so there's basically a production line within people who manufacture these, and you've got to get into that queue.
Okay.
The earlier you can get into that queue, the better off you are, and sometimes you can go and effectively buy a production slot. So that you can get into the queue, but you may not necessarily have all of the design completed. So you're buying that slot, you're basically making, a partial commitment, and then the design would ultimately follow and, get in and take the place of the slot once the design has been completed.
And you also said that there's maybe an opportunity to look at used modules as well, depending on what the inventory looks like.
Depending on what the market is out there.
Right, or it could be a combination, which would probably speed things up if we found something that was appropriate and available.
Well, there's two parts here, right? There's kind of the actual modular production, and there's the site work to be able to support the modular. So, and that work has to be done in advance as well. So, there's the actual design, there's the site work that has to follow to support the installation of the modulars, and any permitting that might be required associated with that.
All right. And before we move on to master plan, I did have some questions. So there have been concerns that have been brought up. There's actually been some ideas brought up recently about moving this from our plan that we put forward, and this just came up recently, to moving this directly into the Westlands, allegedly for free, and that's what I've heard. And one of the things I've heard is they want to expand out the classrooms. Now, would that necessitate a couple of things? Would that necessitate permits, and would that trigger code upgrades?
What do you mean by expand out the classrooms?
So right now, I guess we have 12 classrooms, and this is based on somebody else's presentation. They want to turn it into 6 classrooms with a lot of kids in it. Would that trigger a code?
So Westlands is an existing school,
Yep.
and you can move into that school and continue to use it without triggering most codes. You do have an ADA issue there, so those get triggered differently than other code issues.
Okay.
You need to provide accessibility for students and families.
Do we have an idea what the accessibility cost would be?
we do, and it'll be part of the cost estimates that will be part of what we give forward.
But I also think, right, this isn't something that designers are looking at, trying to figure out in terms of number of students in classrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, you guys will have to figure out as to, whether that's, an acceptable fit. Ultimately, and we don't know that much about, what else is being proposed. But I do think that it's important to make sure that, whatever is presented here, because we looked at a lot of options, and the basis for comparing those options was to try and have an apples-to-apples comparison. So, in other words, it's the same number of classrooms that we're trying to address, the same type of curriculum, the same type of, if you're going to go and put these in, and there's going to be code upgrades that would be required, it would be required where they're required. And, the same would go with the number of students in classrooms, to address that. So
the reason I bring it up is because this is clearly the model we support here on the school committee is this one, and this is the one we want to go forward with the town meeting. But now, because this other presentation has come out, there are questions specifically regarding, well, why can't we move it to the Westlands?
So we actually looked at that
Yep.
example, and we actually looked at costing that out, and you could move children into and create a pre-KK school.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with community ed?
Right.
It's not a zero cost. You have to move community ed. They have to go someplace. We actually talked about that. The solution to that was to come back with the D2 plan that we showed you.
Yep, I remember.
So D2 decided that you would put modulars on the Westland school so the community ed could stay close to the PK. And that was the solution, so that you had the PK through K school at Westlands and 4 modulars. That gets you year 1, but you still need 4 more modulars year 2. And that was part of Center School Edition.
Right.
So that is the D2 option, and it was decided that
Thank you, brother.
for the additional money, it was best to have all students at their home school.
So we're not actually saving the 8 million or so we're looking to by going with the Westlands plan, is what I'm getting to.
We would still need 8 modulars.
We'd still need 8 modulars, right.
10 modulars.
10 modulars,
modulars.
excuse me.
So-
and we would have to create a centralized system.
It was
taking kids-
9 to 10 modulars because the community ed, once,
Right.
they could reduce their program because now you have a full-day kindergarten, so their program is reduced, but they still needed modular space for others. So that was a minimum of 4 and admin space, which created the 5th modular.
But they wouldn't necessarily be able to reduce that program if we didn't go to full-day kindergarten across the board.
That's
If it
correct.
was a mixed model of partial full-day that got filled through a lottery and half-day, we'd still need to provide at least some level
They
of...
would be still servicing those half-day children.
That's right.
That's
this
correct.
is when it starts to get dicey.
Complicated.
Because, you have different modes of comparing these things, so.
Right. And then you would have the additional operational costs, and this is more for Dr. Lang, of operating a new bus schedule. You'd have more buses on the roads. There's a conflict.
You'd have multiple buses in each elementary neighborhood at the same time.
Right.
Some kids would get on one bus, other kids would get on a second bus.
And based
at
on
the
the
same stop.
And based on, and this is not a knock on this year, just generally speaking, the first 2 weeks of school with bus schedules. Now, this is my first year going through it on a committee. The complexity of managing a bus schedule is a serious thing, and I didn't realize how much work went into it. So that would that complicate that process more?
Yeah, as bad as the existing process is, the buses are really staying within zone, within their neighborhoods
Yeah.
to bring the kids to their schools. In addition to those runs, you'd actually have to be making new runs that go from each of the 4 neighborhoods to Westlands.
Right.
So that would be a whole other layer of busing that would actually have to be added that doesn't exist right now.
So.
Cost and complexity.
Right. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, because I watched the other presentation, is that while this sounds like a free option that doesn't cost the town anything, there's actually more operational costs that were not being accounted for. There are costs of community ed that is not being accounted for. So we're not really saving $8 million for these modulars. And again, we're going forward to town meeting with this solution, and I think this is the right solution, and I think everybody's agreed, we voted on it, and we've done the hard work, and you've done a lot of the hard work. I mean, I can't even remember how many options we looked at, but I think it's maybe more than 40. It's a lot of options we looked at. And I think this is still the best design. But those are the questions we're getting via social media, through phone calls.
They're fair questions.
They're
but-
fair questions.
But we have done the research, we have run the numbers, we have presented those options to the committee, and have found solutions for those as well.
I would be curious to understand, if they did ever go forward with that plan, I do want to understand just generally what the cost would be for the ADA upgrades.
For Westlands.
For the Westlands.
That'll be part of the final report anyway.
That's
because-
correct.
Because that's going to be something we're going to have to address, whether we go forward
Right,
or
right.
with one plan or another.
That was a
We need
specific-
to address the accessibility.
Right.
That's correct.
That was a
Infrastructure
specific
issues.
question I got from a parent, and so I feel like I have an obligation
So
to
it
answer.
becomes part of your capital improvements.
Right.
As part of maintaining Westland School, you will begin to address some of those capital improvements for ADA solutions, for
And-
that age group too, because it is different than other age groups.
Right. And so essentially, everything on this chart
Mm-hmm.
is going to have a number associated with it
Yes,
in terms of the capital plan.
yes.
Thank you.
Actually, it's more than what's on that chart. It's
Right.
what's in the actual reports. Most, a good chunk of them have been uploaded to the Dropbox.
Okay.
And they are, because of the extent of the information, we're trying to just send it out in packets so that it can be reviewed and the process can go back and forth a bit.
Okay, wonderful.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. So the master plan options, at least 16 of those were reviewed. And the final 6 that rose to the top were A through J5, A, D, E, H, I2, and J5. A is actually your existing capital improvements only plan. So it doesn't change any of the building facilities. It just continues to maintain and operate those buildings. And you can see that red indicating buildings that are undersized for the programs or the number of students that they're addressing. And A does not solve that problem. All of the other options seek to resolve those problems as well as the full-day kindergarten. And so we took those options and we put them into timelines. The first part in 2016 is addressing the full-day K issue, solving that issue. And then in spring of 2017, you would be submitting your SOI for your priority project. And that depends on the option that you choose to go forward with, whether that is the early childhood center, the 3 through 5 elementary school, the middle school, the junior high school, or the high school with the attached early childhood center. Each of those options are there. You would then begin to go through your facilities group. This timeline actually assumes that you are invited into the MSBA process within the 18 months that is typical for first-time applicants. If it's a go-around, it's another year and a half. And then you would go to your fall vote, and then go into design for the project. In 2021, we're suggesting that you revisit your master plan so that you can look at your second priority project and begin to understand what that is. And depending on the option, we have our suggestions for what those might be. And then in 2022, you would submit that SOI. In 2023, you would probably be occupying your first project building, and again, depending on which project you choose. Again, in 2024, you might be looking for your second vote, and in 2026, again, revisit your master plan so you can submit your third SOI for if you're going beyond that. Beyond option 2, we're proposing that it's elementary school options. Oops. That is it. So tonight, much shorter presentation, so if you have any questions with the master plan.
Our option that we're looking at right now is with putting the modules on. Which one is that letter?
With the modulars?
Yeah.
So the modulars for full-day kindergarten is in 2016, and it is across the board. Every option
Okay.
that you have depends on full-day kindergarten being implemented soon,
Got it.
immediately,
And then those are our options for the new.
and then going
capital.
forward after that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
This then helps us transition into like phase 2 of the work. So the full day K options in each of the proposals. And then, after town meeting to gear up for the statement of interest submission in the spring is when we need to really kind of vet out one of these 5 options to include in the statement of interest.
Got it. Okay.
Right, because remember, modulars are temporary solutions, not
Right.
long-term solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They're 15-year solutions.
They can be, yeah. Well, I'm just saying in the eyes of MSBA, you know, and how they do
I
it.
see, yeah.
We see them going away in 2023 when you occupy your first
Yep.
phase of the project.
Got it, right. So whatever we decide, if we build something,
Whatever option you choose, we view them, the modules, as being
It
short-term.
would, the temporary nature of them would be resolved by that plan.
got it. So it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
I'm just curious from the committee for a little feedback, if this were the type of presentation that Doran Whittier actually made at town meeting to update the community on the status of the comprehensive facility assessment to bring us up to speed. Do we feel like this is a good presentation? Are there any areas that you think we need to go back and refocus on? Anything missing, need to be emphasized? I'm just curious.
I would like emphasis on people, so I've heard this not only from the presentation, I've heard this at some of the PTO meetings and other places, that there is a thought, it just won't go away, that the Westlands is a free option. And I keep explaining over and over again, and I would really love to make sure that the town meeting understands that that is not a free option, that there are costs involved. It comes up constantly. Well, why don't we just put everybody in the Westlands? And you explain to them, well, there's more operational cost, and then we go through the whole thing. And I just think it's very important that we put a focus on that. It is not a free option, especially because of the community entities.
Right, so I believe it was 5.2 million.
Right.
Because you're including the modulars for community ed, and then within the following year, you're adding modulars because your enrollment change goes up.
Yep.
And once your enrollment goes up, you then have to support additional kindergarten students. Kindergarten is where you're going to be seeing the greatest increase earliest.
I would just like to add some kind of emphasis on that. I don't know if everybody else agrees, but.
So, Dr. Lane, you're asking if Doran Whittier makes a presentation similar to what they did tonight in a short version, or
No, like
the format?
The PowerPoint that they actually shared tonight, that, the complete PowerPoint, that kind of, in a 10-minute, kind of 12-minute time frame, just brings everyone up to speed with, kind of where we started, the different options we looked at, highlights, the 5 specific that are remaining, to kind of paint the flavor that the full-day K at this point, is the option that's included within each of these. But I don't want someone walking away from town meeting thinking the only outcome was the full-day K planning, or not knowing kind of where we are with the process of tying in the work to then kind of launch the master plan. Because that really does tie into the second warrant article around trying to secure the funding for the SOI application, hopefully from town meeting. But I think the town would need to see how we're kind of at these 5 options now that
Yeah.
need to be further vetted through the fall, ultimately select one to be part of the SOI that goes into place in March.
Yeah.
How do you feel about if this hits the PowerPoint? Does it feel a little confusing? Do you feel like people are gonna expect us to, or Doran Whittier to explain this? This
is too much.
This is a little bit too much data. I'm curious if we could
get it down to the next 5 years.
Contract it a little bit, give a brief overview. We have experts in the industry, so, if we can just let them just talk as opposed to explaining this looks like it's going to get confusing. How do you feel about that, sir?
Yeah, one option would be to just simplify the graphic and actually, where we have the full-day K, and it's the same model that's going forward in each of the plans, have that just be like one of the outcomes. And then almost more of a, kind of a picture, instead of showing the 10-year timeline, a 12-year timeline of the phasing, maybe just like a little summary of the 5 options that we're looking at. Bulleted type, that there is a childhood center option that will be vetted. There's a middle school, there's a junior high school, there's a high school option. Just that, there are kind of 5 scenarios that we want to continue to explore. This presentation and this timeline is on our website. It'll be part of our presentation if someone really wants to dig deep into it. But just for that night, to be able to kind of give the overview.
This with the narrative?
Michael, you following me?
I hear what you're saying. I don't think I agree. I think I want to see the 10-year plan there, because I think one of the things we need to do is make it clear that if we don't act now, we're not going to see results for that much longer. None of this is a fast process. We need to act now so that, we're going to get results in a timely manner. And I think people need to understand that we really are talking about a 10, 12-year plan. It's going to take that long to affect some of these changes, and time is of the essence. We need to move forward now. If you want to say, you want to drop some of the options that were considered and leave them as kind of a supporting document, or maybe not part of the presentation, but part of a larger packet that's distributed to the town meeting reps, I think that might be a reasonable thing to do. I don't think we have to go through every option that we've considered and rejected. I think one of the other things that we need to do is put some structure around what's this process going to look like going forward. If we have 5 different scenarios that we're seriously considering in terms of long-term work, how are we going to choose? Are we going to continue to have the kind of community input sessions that we had early on? Are we going to narrow this down and make it something that only the school committee works on? Is there going to be some kind of a tri-board or a super group that pushes forward with the various options? Because there are real choices here. These are very different plans, and depending on which route we choose to pursue, this town is going to look different 10 years from now based on that. And we need people to understand that, but I think we have to come to an understanding first of what a roadmap looks like, and ideally that would be part of the presentation as well.
I think we can.
Can I just? I see both of your points, and I just want to say that this town meeting vote, this Article 5, is full-day kindergarten with an emphasis that this is part of a long-term plan. So I do see your point. I think 2 things. First of all, I do want people to know how many options we looked at, because we did look at a lot of it. There is a comment that I get, not too frequently, but every once in a while, is that I don't think you've looked hard enough, which I disagree with. And I don't think people realize, I don't think the average town meeting rep or resident realizes how much time, personal time, we put into coming up with these options, how much time you've put into it professionally, how many discussions we've had, how many meetings we've had to come up with these options. So the fact that we've looked at all of these options, it is important for people to understand that we've done the work to come up with the best possible option on this particular ballot. So there's that. And then I think there is a point to be made, though, do we look out to 2026? Maybe we shrink it down to just the next 10 years is a valid, I think 10 years is good. I think simplifying it, make it easier to read would be great.
I think that, to Sal's point, is, particularly when you get a lot of words, it becomes very dense for somebody who hasn't been involved in the process to try and digest.
I've been involved in this is dense even for me. Like, I'd have to go and study this and say, okay, what am I really looking at?
So I think that, can you go back one slide? Or to the, So the intent of this slide, which is more graphical,
Right.
is to be able to go and say, here are a bunch of different options that solve, problems different ways. And so it's saying, there are a number of different options, and maybe these aren't all of them, and we can figure out how to be able to get the point across, which is, there's been a lot of work that's been done here, right? Understand that some of these options, are kind of risen to the top, but, it's still not so dense, because there's a bunch of words there that you can get the picture, and we may be able to improve upon that. When you go to the next slide, okay, what this is really intending to do is it's taking all of these and it's giving a lot of specific detail of what each one of these is happening over a period of years, a forecasting horizon. And I don't think necessarily that, at this point, for people who are trying to understand, what's going on, that they're trying to understand the nuance of each one of these options over a 10-year planning horizon at town meeting. The importance, I think, at town meeting here is to understand that there is a 10-year horizon, right? And that things are going to happen, and they're not going to happen overnight. And I think that we can do that again graphically, because I think people are able to digest, the graphics if it's presented properly. It's much more understandable, because here, you could spend a half hour on this very easily trying to go and get the point across, and you don't have the time, and you're going to lose people at town meeting. And this maybe is, I think, good for this group who's been very tight to the process, but I think that we can go and put something together that's going to still get the point across, okay, but it's going to be a little bit more user friendly, a little bit more big picture in some regards, but still put forward the fact that there has been a tremendous amount of work, okay, that's been done to support this, and I think we can put that together as part of the presentation.
Mr. Superintendent, and members of the board, I think we have a wonderful option and a wonderful opportunity right now to strike at this town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've never been in this better position to accomplish full-day K. I think in this instance, if a highly respected organization like Durham Whittier get up, and I'm not placing words in anyone's mouth, but imagine them saying, listen, we've looked over X number of options here, and it's our experience and our opinion to narrow it down to these few options, and from these few options, this is what it's going to cost in order for you to accomplish full-day K. But in the process, we've looked at this over the next 10, X amount of years to 2026, and we have solutions in place. I just feel that if we give this, you're going to drag this on. The longer things go, the more it gets complicated, the more people get confused, the less likely they're able to react quickly, which is our focus right now, today, full day K. Am I saying it the wrong way? And
No, you
push
make
back.
sense. You got it.
I agree.
You
Well,
got it.
you've got two different warrant articles, right?
There's the other warrant article.
There's going to be a very long discussion about full day K, because that's big money.
Yeah.
This, I think, is more about the follow-on warrant article, where we're not asking for an awful lot of money.
You're talking about the 40G.
Yeah, to continue this work. And so I think, you may just put up the more graphical page, let this be kind of a support document for it, and say, look, this is, after a lot of work, this is where we are now. And you can, just by looking at this chart, you can see that there are 5 very different options. You can, if you'd like, you can dig down and see how much work there is involved in each one of the options. But regardless of the option you pick, it's going to be years of work to bring any of them to fruition. And our ask then is for that additional money to keep that work moving forward. I don't think that needs to be a particularly long presentation.
Dr. Lang, why do I feel like that 40,000 that we're asking for is compressed into even a smaller explanation, which is, listen, in order for us to get 50% of the money back, we got to get into the queue. In order to get into the queue, we need to spend X number of dollars, because this is not an easy process. Why do I feel like it's kind of that simple, or am I oversimplifying it?
No, I mean, the more I hear the discussion back and forth, I see valid points on both sides, I really do. I wonder, and again, I'm speaking out loud here, but to not confuse things at town meeting, I'm wondering if we actually separate this
That's right.
presentation.
That's right.
And-
This does not, I apologize, sir, this can't be talked about with full day K.
I think you need to, some detractors potentially around full day K might say, well, we don't know that there's a bigger plan. We don't know where this is going. This is just that component piece. I think if in the global overview, we just talk about the different steps that have gone into play, similar to what you did tonight with the little checklist about what's coming. And we really focus the first discussion on more of, we've gone through multiple iterations of the K scenario, where we wanted K to be, and really focus the $7.9 million vote on K, on this. Get that vote off the table, and then kind of shift into a smaller presentation on, now we want to continue with this global work. We've identified these 5 areas. There's this graphic, there's the more extensive graphic. Let people kind of see what we're actually talking about, look at the scheduling, and really take both votes as up or down votes, but not try to have, I don't want to have the second vote for the 40,000, as important as it is. I don't want to lose sight of, this is our long-term plan. I don't want people to be confused during the K vote, that there's too much information coming at them and they can't figure out where is K and where is this bigger plan. So I wonder if it's really 2 isolated presentations. One super just addressing the K issues and even anticipating some of the questions we're going to get about some of the alternate plans and things that we've looked at, and try to, kind of knock them off and address why we went one direction, not another one, and move the K question, and then separately kind of look at this long-term strategic plan as a separate
I feel
presentation.
passionate that if we can keep full-day K simple and clean and to the point,
Right.
and then the 40,000, we can talk about, look how much work we had to do. This is why we need to spend the 40 after we get the vote, in a positive vote that we're looking for full-day K. I just think those two need to be separated and not confused, and no better people to be able to articulate this than Brad and his team by saying, when he talks about the 40, there's a lot of work here, guys, because we're looking at the next 10,
Right.
15 plus years, 20 years.
Well, when you look at, even at that chart, and you look at the one consistent in column 216, or 2016, it's that one full-day K scenario.
Finish the full day K discussion with the other half, and that, other 80%. And then I would say, once they have the vote and we find out whether we're successful or not, then this is the next discussion.
Keep
And
it
then
nice and simple.
Because we don't
Go
really
for the
know where
full-day
that
K.
solution's going. And I do agree to Mike's point. We could maybe, between now and then, talk a little bit about, what do we want that process to be? We've got 5 very different plans, 5 very viable plans for the community to vet, the committee to vet. But where the full-day K is consistent at this point, keep that an isolated vote, keep that an isolated presentation. And then when that is done, shift
Then bring
into,
this, yeah.
now we've got 5 options that we want to look at, and this is what we want to vet between now and February. We need the 40,000 to be able to do that for the March or April submission.
I agree. All right.
In fact, you may not want to hear this, but I think there should actually be 3 presentations. Because I think the first needs to be an overarching presentation focused largely on the capital plan, but a broad overview of the work. I think that should be heard during the reports.
In other words, what did we do with the
very
200,000?
Yeah, basically a report back to town meeting with.
Oh, the results?
What did we get for 200,000? And that's where I think it's appropriate to talk about the physical plan, to the maintenance work that you've identified and is going to need to be done. As part of that, I think there should be a brief discussion, maybe 1-2 slides tops, that says, in addition to the maintenance work, we've identified a couple of other expansion areas. One is full-day K. This is the plan we're going to be putting forward later this evening for full-day kindergarten. And don't say any more than that. Just identify the approach that we've chosen to take in that first report. Then we can dig down into the details in it during what is it, Article 5?
5 and 6.
Right. And do the same thing with the longer-term work in Article 6. Again, just say, in that first report, say, part of the work we've done also has been focused on working up a long-term plan for the district. And, maybe the one colored slide there saying this is a basic overview of the plan or the state of the work at this point, because it's not a single plan yet. We've identified 5 different possibilities going forward. That's going to take more work, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that warrant article.
I'm doing something I pride myself in not doing, and which is this. What do you suggest? You guys do this all the time. I should have asked that question first. Do you have experience in what we're trying to accomplish going in front of committees like this, and how best to disseminate this information? I should have asked this question, and I pride myself in doing that first.
We do. And I can also give you perspective as, a building committee chair. okay, in my district, which I was for a project. I think there's a fine line ultimately between the role of a consultant, okay, and their position to be, presenting, the facts and the process, and being able to do what we do, which is to, develop information, digest information, and provide you guidance. But I think that fine line between advocating coming from a consultant, okay, that's not really our job. Our job here, okay, is to provide you with information, and it's iterative, and, we respond to that so that you're in a position to be able to make the best possible decision you can, and armed with all of that information. And I think particularly at public meetings, you need to be conscious of that, because, you have that, sometimes you get that carpetbagger, backlash. And so I think our job, and what we typically try and do, is, we, like they say, right, we present the facts. And, we want to go and be able to go and say, in terms of what you're saying, Mike, I think it's perfectly feasible to go and say, here's, an update of where we are overall in the process. And then there are two other, things that are going on. One of them is somewhat, they're both related, one related more directly to the master plan, and then, what comes out of the master plan, which is an adjunct to that, and it kind of took on its own life a little bit, which was full day K, but it's still part of it. And I think that those two things can be addressed separately. But I think from our perspective, we want to make sure that we're presenting, as your consultant, as your expert, so to speak. We appreciate all your kind words, Sal, but not to necessarily take on our position of advocacy for any particular option, but to present that as based on, here's the process we went through, and, that the committee has made, some decisions, not all decisions, because I think that's in your overall best interest in terms of people's perception of what our role is, and then what your role is, okay, ultimately as the school committee and the working group, et cetera. And that fine line, it's important to walk it, but not to cross over it.
I think that's a good point. I think
that's an excellent point.
we should take the lead on the presentations for warrant articles 5 and 6. They'll be there for backup, but we're going to have to do the lifting on that. For the overall report itself, I think that can be more factual, that can be more cut and dried. And when you get to the part about full-day kindergarten, I don't think you have to go through every option, but I think it's sufficient to say there's a long section in here that documents what we did, and the school committee has made a choice. And they'll be talking about that more later tonight.
Exactly. And I think, that way we're presenting that, right? And, we've given you all of the facts.
Right.
And now you coming from, the school side of the equation, you've made decisions based on those facts. And here's why we, okay, as, the school committee or the building committee or whomever, we've made those decisions based on that, and here's why.
Right. Because it's not, these facts are not sufficient for us to have made a determination. When we talked through the various options for full-day kindergarten, we brought other issues into it that weren't addressed by the study group. I mean, we talked about what's best educationally for the kids. That wasn't part of the scope of their work. That's something that we brought in, and I think that's important to point that out to the town meeting reps. There are 100 ways to skin a cat.
And it informs, and that's just the nature of the process, your feedback informs how we, address things, and that's how the process works. But I do think it's important that, we're your consultant, we're your expert, we present that, and then, ultimately this is your project and the town's project, and the decisions on that rightfully rest with you. And so, you're in the position to be able to go and say, so we analyzed all of the information, and, we've made decisions based on that, and here's why.
I'd like to make a suggestion and/or a recommendation. I think very quickly, Brad and his team put together what they're going to present, and maybe even come in front of this board, however it is, or certainly come in front of one or two members, and almost show us how they're going to present it. And I think we need to do our own homework on our side, and we need to put our own bullet points together of what we're going to say. I think the last thing we want to do is allow, Brad to put together a presentation, and then as it gets a little closer, we hear it maybe for the first time or first or second time just before town meeting. I think we need to sharpen up our skills a little bit, maybe even do some mock understanding of what's going to take place, just to make sure that, we're prepared, because I appreciate and I agree what Brad says, and I think if we do this the wrong way, we're going to get the wrong result.
Agreed.
I'd just like to make a comment. I want to go back to what John started out with a while ago. I watched all an hour and a half of the presentation that was made last night on my phone today. So it was a long presentation, but the timing was great. Short time before town meeting, so in order for us to act, we have to scramble. And the other thing is, their message was very simple. You don't have to spend the money, and we can have kindergarten. And I can tell you right now, that's what people who are on the borderline are going to pay a lot of attention to. They may not vote that way in the end, but we don't have to spend $7 million, and we can have it. We can have it all. It's not going to be ideal, but we can have it all. That sells so quickly. We have to address those two things. And I don't care, I think, your suggestions about how we go about doing it are fine. But it was an hour and a half presentation with an awful simple and very easy to sell argument. And I'd just like to add at this point, because I can't make it through the night without saying it, I'm very disappointed that this presentation was made last night without any prior notification to the school committee. We're the people who have been working on this for months, hour after hour, with paid consultants who have done an excellent job. She credited you with a lot because she built a whole presentation off of your statistics. But anyway, to have that presentation last night and get everything stirred up was purposeful politically, purposeful in terms of timing, and not helpful to the town at all. And I'm very disappointed. And I'll just leave it at that, but it's just something I had to.
I'd like to add factually incorrect as well.
Yeah.
What's that?
Plus that. That is not free. It's $5.2 million just for the modulars, and I think it was wildly inappropriate, but.
I just wanted to note that starting in 2017 to 2018, the number of students do not fit into Westland, so you would have to add
Right.
the 4 modulars. And that's important to know, to go back to look at the enrollment data and the projection for what you're going to be facing a year from now. So using today's numbers could work, but today's numbers only hold you for today.
Parents have wanted full-day K in this town since 1992, and every year it gets punted down the road. And it's time. It's the right year. We don't have to go to a ballot because we're not asking to increase taxes. It's the right time to do it, and we got to get to town meeting with the right message. So I agree.
We got to get the town meeting with the right people, because
Right people, right.
we need Barbara, and we need yourself, and we need the people that have those connections. We need to get the story out there so the people that we want are in the room, also supporting the message, not just be, walk into that room with no support. I think if that's the case, to Chairman Thomas's point, there are going to be a bunch of people that says, we can have it all, and it doesn't cost us anything. But it does.
It does.
And it costs more than just...
More than just money.
That's right.
It's people. There's a people cost for all these free solutions that aren't really free monetarily, and when you talk about children's education.
That's right.
I'd like to add one other thing. If you had watched that presentation, either initially or on tape or whatever, you'd get the idea that we hadn't been working with the town side, which it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, the superintendent, particularly, and other people have been working with the town manager and people from the finance committee, and everyone else has been involved since we started our 16 hours of meeting. And I think it's important that people understand that, because there were comments that we operate on our own and we're not part of the town. And we've been working closely with the town side since this whole thing began. And so anyone that picked up that we haven't been, it's incorrect.
I mean, listen, all this is going to be another tax on the people of Chelmsford that want to send their kids to school. They're going to pay for education.
Right.
That's our solution.
Backdoor tax
Yeah,
for parents.
that's all this is. And what we're trying to say is education should be free for not only a kindergarten, full day K, it should be for all the way up to, 12th graders. So I just don't think it's fair, and I think that's going to be a conversation. Why are you piling this on, the hardworking men and women of this community that have children that they want to enter full day K? Why do they have to pay?
And Mike made the point the other day, would you charge somebody to send your kid to 6th grade? He said it the other day.
We've been talking
Right.
about that.
Right. No, you would never charge somebody to go to school in the 6th grade for a full day, unless you go to a private school. And, yeah, it's a great point. And the other thing, and you've also made the point, I think Mike makes a lot of really good points for all that chatting he does, that when you charge for full-day kindergarten, you make a two-tiered system, because people without means are going to get some kind of accommodation, and somebody with wealth is just going to pay to send, and then all the people that are going to struggle are all the rest of the middle class. How am I going to budget $4,000 to send my kid to school for a full day? So then you have half the kids with 2 hours a day of school, and then the rest with a full 5.5. It's a moral question for me. I mean, we have the money to do it. We're going to go to town. We're going to vote on it, and I think we're going to have a good result. But we got to just do the work.
John, it's easy to make a decision when somebody else pays. When you're paying, you'll see how fast that you contribute to the situation. So it's easy for you to say, well, you can want full day K, you pay
Pay for it.
because I'm not paying for it.
Well, what I hear all the time is only 18% of the town are parents or have kids in the school. And my retort to that is always, but 100%, or nearly 100%, went through a public school, and probably your kids did too, and probably your grandkids. So somebody paid for all of those people that probably didn't have a direct vested interest.
Folks, we don't need to keep these people here all night.
Thank you for coming.
If we're not going to talk with them.
And I want to
So,
say thank you again for your work. Your work has
Yeah.
been just really outstanding.
Thanks very
It's
much.
Thank you,
impressive.
Brad. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'll follow up tomorrow.
Great.
Thank you.
We gotta be ready for this. We gotta do some mock, some PowerPoints, make sure everything is organized.
Okay.
Something academic, that'd be
Yes,
different.
we're going to switch gears for a little bit. We received our MCAS data about a week or so ago from the state, and Linda actually has a update for you, a little presentation on kind of how we, how things went with our first pass at test data. This is data, obviously, that the curriculum coordinators and building administrators are starting to go through, but just wanted to give you a flavor for the results that we received just over the last week or so. So,
Doesn't seem to want to project.
what is it, Michael?
He's talking with you. Keep talking.
It's all you at this point. Do you want me to put it up on mine?
You don't have the most of it. Hang on, let's all be patient. I need a new computer. Yeah, let me bring it back and see if I can put it this way.
I see trees and rocks.
Oh, yeah, that's the MCAS data.
We're underwater?
Just bringing up a recovered file.
Can we crush that?
Well, I have to email it to you. I don't want my email up there. All right, let's do this. Recovered file.
I tell you what, can we progress on to item 3 while Linda's getting the presentation going? Sure. And then we'll come back to that. So at the, after we conclude the discussion on the academic update, one of the decisions that the school committee needs to vote on is what testing format we'll actually adhere to over the course of the spring. So as the state shifts, there was MCAS, Park, Now we're moving into kind of MCAS 2.0. The question on what kind of format we're going to use for the spring is coming up. So the DOE sent us a memo a week or two ago indicating we needed to make our selection. What the DOE is recommending is that in grades 4 and 8, the district participate in the online assessment. And then what they left is grades 3, 5, 6, and 7 to the district's discretion if you want to do paper and pen or if you'd like to do the online testing for those grades. So after reading through all the information, the admin team agrees that we should go forward with the grade 4 and 8 online testing. There is a waiver that we could apply for if we don't think we could pull it off, but I think it's actually time to kind of test the system and see what kind of response we're going to get from both the device end and the infrastructure end. So we're recommending going with the state's recommendation to test electronically grades 4 and 8, but for the spring to maintain the paper and pencil test for grades 3, 5, 6, and 7. Happy to answer any questions. We need to get back to the DOE by Friday the 14th. But at the very end of the memo was just the recommendation. And again, I think this will give us a good test of our system, both the existing devices we have and also so the infrastructure to kind of test the wireless and capabilities and things. So I think we can handle 2 grades, but I wouldn't go much further than that. Particularly even just as the rest of the communities in the state, most will be doing the 4th and 8th. I'd like to be able to have some data to kind of gauge against those other communities at the same time. So that's the recommendation.
So with that, if you could help me with the motion.
Sure. It'd be a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation to administer the spring MCAS test to grades 4 and 8 electronically, and then 3, 5, 6, and 7 using the paper and pen version.
Okay, let me see if I can repeat that. I make a recommendation that we follow the superintendent's. I make a motion that we follow the superintendent's recommendations of grades 4
And 8
and 8
electronically,
and grades 3
5
and 5,
6 and 7.
6 and 7 using the paper
And yep, paper and pencil
pencil
format.
testing.
Is there a second?
Second. Do we want to have discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Are we going to be ready? Do you feel confident we'll be ready?
We need to be. We need to try this for the
Gonna
spring.
get this done.
We need to make it work. If I think we'll be ready. I think we'll do what we need to do to get ready. But if we don't at least kind of stress test those 2 grade levels, we're never going to be ready a year from now, as we have to keep adding grades. I think the DOE originally was talking like 2019, 2020, everything would be electronic.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think they don't want to wait till the very end either to see that things aren't going to work, and they want to start putting a little bit of stress on the system. So I think a 2 grade level per year rollout is sufficient. My big concern as we work with the technology and the curriculum groups is taking, we're still continuing that inventory of our existing devices. I want to make sure that the children in the district are taking the test using a standard type device, that we don't have discrepancies with some kids using, an iPad, other students on a laptop, and some kids in a computer lab. But I think if we don't try for this spring, we're never going to know what kind of variables we're dealing with. To that also, I just wouldn't want to go much further.
Yeah.
Because this is the first year we really would have kind of stressed the system.
Is there any way to do a split? Or can we do half of the 7th grade computer-based and half of it pen and paper-based?
I wouldn't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Do you mean to add another grade level?
To do,
I'd like to see a comparison between the results as close as we can get to see if there's an effect of asking kids to do it electronically versus with pen and paper.
Yeah, my concern with that would be, we know that the state is eventually going all electronic, one way or the other. They're going to remove the paper and pencil option for us at some point in the future.
I mean, that's their plan.
Yeah, but I don't see, in all reality, them backing off of that. Eventually, it's got to move to that format. And I, personally would feel bad, almost kind of setting up a group of our own kids to have half take it on the electronic and half take the paper pencil if we know they're going that way.
Okay.
I don't know how valid the results would be, because again, we're talking small groups of 7th graders. So I wouldn't want to pick one school and not the other, so you'd be doing like half McCarthy, half Parker. I don't know that the data we'd get back, would that be reliable after just 1 year? So I don't know what it would really do for us. I think we'd get more bang for the buck, actually, just if we did paper and pencil, comparing against all other districts who are doing paper and pencil. And even, we can then take a look at other districts that maybe do elect to do more electronic.
I think that tells us nothing, because you can't deconvolute the effect of the different district. Right, I mean,
but I think the state's
each
gonna be
district
taking a
has
look
its
at
own
trends.
demographics.
Yeah, but I think the state will be taking a look at trends versus the paper, pencil, and electronic. But I don't think
They've seen the trends, and they don't seem to be responding to them. But, look, if we
Yeah.
can't do it, then we can't do it. That's okay.
I would recommend just doing the 4th and 8th and doing an all grade level situation in our district, and keeping the 3, 5, 6, and 7 paper and pencil.
I agree.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any dissent? No. Unanimous, 4-0.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll switch back to presentation number 2, the academic data. So Linda, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We went to a Plan B, which is a PDF. So I want to stay with the theme of words, dense, and slow-moving. So that's why we're going to get right into academic data. Before we get into all of this,
Resemble that remark.
I listen, I pick up the
Oh, Larry the cheese.
Okay, it's gonna be
Oh,
fine.
Larry the cheese.
But before we get into that, I think you need a little bit of a tutorial, because every year when you go through this whole process, you have to really think about all of these acronyms that come along with what we do when we look at the data. And this is going to be a little bit of a story, because this is the beginning of the story. What happens in the summertime is we get the preliminary data, and that preliminary data is embargoed. And that's for us to take a look at discrepancy reporting and making sure we have all of our students and that things are going well. If we have to do any type of waivers or anything with the state, that's the time to do it. And then this information comes out unembargoed, right? So now we can actually access it. But we've been taking a peek at what that preliminary data looks like. But before we get into that, so some of the terms that we have to use tonight is the Progress and Performance Index. I'm going to be calling it the PPI. And that's a combination of 7 different indicators to come up with that number. And what goes into that is the Composite Performance Index for ELA, mathematics, and science. The other term you'll hear is the student student performance growth. And what goes into that piece is that there's for ELA and there's for mathematics. And then there's 2 other indicators that are only specific to the high school, and that's the dropout rate and the graduation rate. So all 7 of these components come up with our accountability data. So that's why when I talk about dense and words, so those are some of the things, but I'm going to walk you through and give you some visuals of what that looks like. So first things first, we're going to take a look at the district overall. That's where I would be looking. And what you'll see here is I gave you what all grades look like for English language arts. And when we talk about all grades, we're talking about 8 through 10. So these are all of our students. And I also gave you what was,
10 or 8 through 10?
I'm sorry, 3 through 10.
Okay,
Thank you. Good thing you're here. So this would be for English, mathematics, and for science. So there are some of the numbers to take a look at what we're seeing overall. And I also gave you the total amount of students for both regular ed and for special education, so all students and special education, because sometimes when I see some of these percentages, they look a little alarming, but then when you actually figure out what we're talking about, we're maybe looking at a couple of students. So we don't want people to get too bogged down with the percentages. So this is how many of our students, percentages of students in advanced, proficient, needs improvement. We have warning and failure. Failure is only at the high school level. That CPI that I talked about, which is the Composite Performance Index. And what that really means is you are assigned a number if you receive advanced, proficient, needs improvement, or warning. So it's based on 100, 75, 50, 25, and 0. They add up all those numbers and divide it by the amount of students, and there you get for your CPI. The other one at the end is the student growth percentile, and what's important there is that you want to be between 40 and 60, with 50 being a full year's growth. So when I go across that last column for all grades for English, math, and science, well, science doesn't have a student growth percentile, I'll explain that to you. I see that we are above, for all students, that 50% at 62, and then 54 for mathematics. When I look at our subgroups, I see that they at least have a year's growth for ELA, and that they're below that year's growth for mathematics, but they're still in that 40 to 60 range. So that's what we get to when it comes to student growth. district overview. So, I did not make a mistake on this slide. You'll see that we don't have some of the state information. Because Massachusetts, most of the states did take Park, there is no composite performance index for the state, so we do not know how we compare to the state. We only have, for this current year, we only have how we compared against ourselves for this year. So if you look, for the most part, we stay in the 90s, anywhere between 90 and 94 for English language arts, but we don't know how we compare to the state. And if you look at our percentile, our growth percentile for all our grades separated, and again, that's that you want to definitely be between 40 and 60, and you want to be above 50, with 51 being the target. We are above the target, so our students are growing within within the level that they have.
Do you have questions now or later?
You're more than welcome. I love it. Let's do this. Let's just go along with this.
How did they calculate SGP? If they can't calculate CPI, how can they calculate SGP?
That's a great question, but they can do it with the numbers. I know, CPI, you would think they would be able to do that. They should be able to do the CPI as well, but they're only giving us SGP, and they're only giving it to us at the school level. So in other words, I don't have student-level SGP and teacher-level SGP.
Wait, what? So a school-level SGP must be the average of the students in the school.
Correct, but they're only looking at fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth, seventh, and eighth, all in the districts that actually gave.
Right, but to calculate the SGP, you've got to link the kids up from last year's scores to, right? You have to develop a cohort that matches them from last year, and then you look at the results from this year. And if a bunch of people were taking the MCAS last year and moved to the Park this year, how you can't match them with that. So you've got to go back to last year, find a bunch of kids who matched our scores, whose districts remained with the MCAS.
Correct, that's what the state
And they
does.
don't have enough numbers to calculate a CPI based on that.
Correct.
So how can they possibly calculate an SGP?
I'm not the psychometrician that comes from the state, but they're giving us this data to look at how our students
Yes,
actually
they're giving
grow.
us this
I
data
know.
to look at, and
But we also
look,
get our own CPI as well. So we're getting our individual, but we're not getting the state piece.
I like the CPI.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a valid reference point. I have real reservations about making any kind of judgments about what we're doing based on the SGP for this year. And frankly, it's going to be the same situation next year,
Mm-hmm.
because if all of our, mirroring kids took the Park this year, you're still not going to be able to calculate an SGP next year, even if everybody takes the MCAS 2.0. I think we're just in a little bit of a valley here, where SGP is not going to mean an awful lot for our district.
So we shouldn't talk about it too
Well,
long.
I think.
Well said.
Well,
I would disagree, though, because
the
that's
trouble
what
is we only have a couple of ways of looking at the district. And we need to have a serious discussion about where we are academically in this district. And the state is pitching SGP as one of the fundamental ways of looking at it. But I think in our case, it's not a real good mirror to look at ourselves with.
Right, but the only difference between a CPI and the SGP is CPI, if you have a student that's in the needs improvement, they're not going to shoot up to the proficient and in the advanced. They're not on a level playing field. When it comes to the student growth percentile, that puts students on a level playing field. So they're looking at all needs improvement students that got that same score. Did they go up higher?
Yes, I
mean, we can argue
agree.
the state piece there.
That's
That,
the way
for
it's supposed
us,
to work.
lets us know that our students are actually making some progress. Because I don't have a difference between 100 points for proficient and 100 points for advanced.
Our students are only making progress relative to other districts that didn't take the Park,
Correct.
which I'm guessing is going to be a bunch of districts that didn't have the resources to administer the Park, which means we're looking
Not
at districts
necessarily,
that don't
like, you
look
have
like us
districts
a
like
lot.
Lexington that stayed with the MCAS. You have some pretty significant districts in there that
Okay.
ended up staying with the MCAS.
A lot of districts similar to us, and I think part of my rationale for not recommending going to Park last year is it's a major shift going from one testing assessment tool to another. And we knew the Park wasn't going to be the test for this spring, that there was
Right.
going to be an alternate test. So if we were consistent with MCAS, why change the entire district for 1 year to go to Park and then do a complete switch again a year from now to MCAS 2.0, whatever it was? The ramp-up time was just too great. I think we all acknowledge, and I think the state to some level acknowledges as well, This is a year or two of flux, beginning last year, this year, and certainly next year, until everyone actually gets in the same testing system, and you're removing that choice, that we're not getting great data, as far as overall reliability or data that we would really want to make huge shifts in programming or changes in curriculum based on, without getting to like year 4, where we're actually all in the new system and we're making that.
Well, so that's the problem, right? Because we need to make shifts in programming based on feedback, and that's
But I was just meaning like a particular element. though.
I know.
You what I mean?
And this is
But
one
you-
piece of a larger puzzle. This is not the end-all, be-all on all the shifts that end up happening with
Right.
programming. It's another piece that we can then attach to some of our work that we're doing, our benchmarking, to see where our students are.
Right, and I think we need to have some conversations about what the metrics are that we're using, and my preference would be not to put a lot of weight with SGP right now.
Do you want me to skip over those slides?
Let it go faster.
How many are there?
Well, that's the thing, you're going to see a lot of redundancy because we're going to look at each school.
But then, because I don't want to sidetrack Linda's presentation here, but then I do think we
I've
need.
already done that.
Well, no, but we
fine.
do need to have the discussion about, and we have internally, what type of local assessments are we using to help inform the decision?
Right.
So that we're not in just 2 years of waiting to get to a new test, but, what type of local assessments are we going to use to better inform the decision? So that's work that's ongoing.
Right, and we are going to look at the subgroups, and I know we see where some of those discrepancies are, but then when you even look at a subgroup, it's not the exact same. They're not all tier 1 in type of
Right.
students. So you might be looking at students with disabilities, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. Those disabilities vary greatly.
Yeah, and your point about small ends there, I think, is well taken.
Yeah, and
That-
same with our L population, depending on their WIDA level, it's a matter of what they end up getting. So you're piling all of these kids into this
Yeah,
category.
basket,
And
yeah.
that's where it gets a little sticky, and we do see where those areas are. There is a common theme. I've had a chance to obviously look at this data a lot more than anybody else, and we're drilling it down, and we have some teachers here that can talk about this a little bit too. We drill it down to the grade level, the school, the class, and the student. So it's a whole lot of work that goes into it, and then we mix it with our students, and we try to target all of our interventions, our monies, into where we think we're going to get the most results, the biggest results. I'll go quickly with that. So you're going to see some of these same things, but you do see a dip in the mathematics for the CPI, but I don't know if the state went down as well. So that doesn't give us a good barometer. Typically, you'll see we stay in the 90s for mathematics, and we'll have to when we start going into those data meetings, which have already started, we're going to dig deeper to find out what exactly is going on. Your favorite slide, you can see a lot of these slides. So again, for the growth though, if I were to then take a look at the growth for mathematics, I would say, okay, students in the different categories are actually making growth. And then science only has a CPI. There is no growth from science. They only take science in the test in grades 5, 8, and 10. Some ninth graders take it depending on where they are in their program of studies. But they don't have a student growth percentile.
Why is there a CPI in science?
Because MCAS is the only test for the science. All students in Massachusetts took the MCAS. They have not made a new test for, yeah. So they actually have the data that we
so they've
need.
got, yeah.
Okay, so little teeny tiny things. So this is what I was talking about. It's that progress performance index, and we have to be 75 or better to be at level 1. If not, you start going down in levels. Chelmsford's a level 2 school district. So we're not at level 3. We don't have a lot of state intervention, but we have a few level 1 schools, and that means they're meeting all of those subgroups, and those are the subgroups we're talking about. You have to meet the 75% percentile in both all students and high-need students in order to get that designation, because you might see some discrepancies in some of the slides. So Chelmsford High School obviously is doing, an unbelievable job, and that's what I was talking about, the percentages. So if you look at some of those percentages up there, even for grade 10 ELA, for all students, it's 2%. That's really not even a full student. If I were to do the math in my head, I would be at point something. Same with the 14% for our students in that warning failure area. That could be only 2 students. And then what we do is we work with those students, give them tutoring, target them, work with their teachers, retest them, and if not, we talk about educational proficiency plans for them at the high school level. So, on to McCarthy Middle School. McCarthy Middle School is a level 2 school, and you'll see, because all students were able to reach that PPI score that we were talking about, but our high-needs students did not meet it. And if we look at the subgroup of students with disabilities, we're going to want to take a closer look as to the programming that's happening for our students with disabilities. And again, all of that data is then, looked together as to how many of our students are advanced, proficient, needs improvement, and warning. And we look at that CPI and that student growth percentile, and we see that the students have at least 1 year worth of growth, and they're staying up in the 80s, high 80s and 90s for CPI. So most of our students are proficient and advanced. Moving on to Park Middle School, again, level 2. And that's because high-needs students, and part of that subgroup below is students with disabilities. We're going to have to take a look at what we're doing for programming, how we can support those students. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, some of these schools that we're going to be looking at, they have separate programming than maybe some of the other schools. Like we have our autism program that's sitting in one of our elementary schools, and those students actually take the MCAS. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, I thought your hand was up. I was like, that's awesome.
High five going
Feel
on
free to
over
do
there.
that.
She's really excited about some of the results on one of the slides.
I was excited too. I'm like, all right, go ahead.
This is
And
so
again,
exciting.
it is. I'm telling you, I get the best presentations. So again, for Parker Middle School, we're seeing that all grades, and we're breaking it down to the subgroups that happen in there to look at how our students are actually progressing. Any questions so far before we start getting into the elementary schools? There's a little bit of a difference at the elementary schools, and what happens is, no?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay, there's a little bit of different at the elementary school where they don't typically have an N number of students enough to look at all of the subgroups, so most of their students do fall into the high needs category. So I ended up giving you a little bit more information. So if there's not more than 20 students in a group, you are not getting the data for that group. You would have to then crunch those students. So we're looking at that high needs population, and again, looking at 29 students, and then I look at 31% in warning. That's a good amount of students. I would want to see what's happening for the programming there. Same in mathematics. Center Elementary School, level 2. The overall, again, that high needs group, we're going to take a peek at what's happening there. And their percentages and their numbers, so their CPI and their SGP. Harrington Elementary School, all students met that performance exactly. Is that actually a 74? No, yeah, I'm going to say they made it. They're 1.0, but they're almost there, so they are still level 2, but their high needs would not have made it. And again, taking a look at the overview of all of their scores, we're going to dig a little bit deeper with that, gives you the overview. So this is my exciting slide. That's supposed to be animated, but it doesn't want to work on my computer today because it's a PDF.
Should have said it was a Galaxy.
Galaxy far, far away, Southborough Elementary School on the other side of town. So they have a new designation. They went up to a level 1 elementary school. They've been a level 2 for quite a few years, along with their other elementary schools, and they met all of the standards for all students and high needs students, and those are the 2 categories. So
great.
that was, there was an exciting day for them.
These levels, what do they mean for us as a district? Or are they just a measuring tool?
Well, usually it's a matter of the intervention with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They also inform the monies for our grants based on what we need for programming.
Okay.
So as you go down the levels, so the lowest level is level 5. That's, pretty significant. That's
You
a
do
take.
not wanna
We
be
are
5.
not going to be, we're not a level 5 school district. That's a takeover from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Once you start getting into 3 and 4, that's when they start to intervene a little bit. They give you a lot of support, they'll have you target your grants, they'll have you target your grants towards specific populations. You don't get a choice in what you're actually moving students towards.
Yeah,
So this is-
that
it's always-
kind of support.
You always want to be as many level 1s as you can.
Absolutely. I mean, level 1's the highest you can be. And sometimes it's a little difficult to stay up there if you're on the border of a level 1 school. So it's not surprising to see a level 1 go down to a level 2. But more importantly, you'd like to see your high school, especially where it's the exit. They have to do this for their competency determination in order to graduate. So it's a graduation requirement.
Gotcha. That's good. Great news.
Yep. And again, their numbers were very, very high. They were able to move more students. The other part about the Progress and Performance Index is that they give you extra credit for moving students from the proficient to the advanced, needs improvement to proficient, and so on. So you get a few extra credit points, because you ideally would like to do that. I mean, in an ideal world, even if you're proficient, we want to keep pushing you through that proficiency as high as you can go.
And that really is what drove South Row's designation as a level 1.
That,
If you look at kind of their distributions, they're not that different than the other elementary schools.
right.
But what you saw was a bunch of kids moving out of the needs improvement into the proficient category, and a significant number of kids moving out of the proficient into the advanced category. And it was those extra points, it looks like, that got them the level 1 designation, which is,
Which is great.
which is good.
Right.
But I hope they can continue to do that.
So then we have to start thinking, here we are, we have this data, what are some of our next steps? So what's happening right now is these data meetings are happening in the schools at the different grades departments. And what happens from there is that they create goals. So they're going to be looking at, all right, are we looking at a certain subgroup? Are we looking at that subgroup along with a certain content area? Because we have to start digging into where are our students not doing so well, where do we have to put support, where do we have to change the curriculum, add lessons, things like that. So those are happening, and you end up with the action plans. We need to always revisit our schedules because our students change significantly depending on what they have in their IEPs. So we're always looking at our scheduling review to make sure that we're giving students exactly what they need in those schools, and it changes. Targeted interventions. So last year was the first year that all 4 elementary schools were Title I schools. We were able to get the waiver for the state. I'm sorry to say for Byam this year, they do not fall in the category of Title I. So we're unable to put interventionists into those schools. So last year was the first year we put all math interventionists into the schools, as well as ELA interventionists. And Byam this year does not have those interventionists.
I thought we were able to apply for a designation as a district or by school.
Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do it by grade span, you could do it by school. If you were to really look at the school, it probably would have been just a school would have been McCarthy Middle School or the high school, because that would have been the bulk of it. So we do a grade span.
Right.
So that we can make sure we give as much support as possible, especially at the lower elementary level.
But so, because even the grade span at Byam does not show the
Right,
demographics
no, it's their
that they
poverty
need?
level.
Right, so we can't, even though overall as a district, we would have the appropriate,
We would have, if we did overall as a district, we'd have to give it to that one school that follows the overall district. Because the highest school with poverty level could be, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm thinking McCarthy or the high school. So if you do it by the district, it's one school.
I see.
You'd have to look at that poverty level. You have to be over the 12.5 in order to receive it.
Right,
So-
but wait, if we're doing it by grade level,
We're doing it by grade span.
grade span, so what's the grade span?
The grade span would be K.
1 to 4?
Yeah, K through 4, K5.
So as a district, the K through 4 population qualifies for Title I money, right?
Right, based on their poverty level.
And so why can't we put interventionists at Byam?
Because they don't fall within that poverty level, which is designated
But
by the
we're-
state, that number.
Right, this is what I don't
We can
understand.
put
Because we're
interventionists-
applying as a grade span, not by schools. We're not saying Center needs it, Harrington needs it, Byam needs it, and South Row needs it, and then being told, no, Byam doesn't meet the qualification.
Yep.
We're saying all the kids, K through 4, in this district, have a demographic population that qualifies us for Title I money.
Right, but even through the grade span, each school has to meet a certain poverty level in order to receive those monies.
Okay, so it's
So
kind of a
Byam-
it's a
Grade span
two-level
within school.
designation.
Right,
Right, so the grade span itself within the district has to qualify, and then each school individually has to qualify as well.
correct. So then, what happens is Byam's always teetering right on that point. So last year, I wrote the waiver, and the state gave us the waiver, but you
Right.
can't go for a second waiver.
Right. Yeah, they were close last year.
Yeah, they were close.
I want everybody to ask what they need to, but it's getting late, and we've got a whole financial report to do, too. So, I don't know.
We're there. This is it.
Okay.
Ready? Look at the next slide.
Bam.
Thank you. Good timing.
Just overall, how's your feeling on how we're doing as a district?
I mean, overall, as a district, this is a great district. We have a very good programming. We're always building programming. We're looking at what we can do for students. Are there areas that we could work on? Absolutely. But when you start digging into some of those subgroups, again, you can't just assume a subgroup is all of these kids do this certain thing. So if we make adjustments in our curriculum or put this intervention in, we'll suddenly be okay. That's not the case. That's not how it works. It takes time, and it is taking time. I mean, I know the Common Core has been here. We know that we've done standard changes, curriculum changes, but again, we don't have the same students in front of us every single year. So we always have to be making adjustments for those students.
Barbara, I'd just like to say one thing. As usual, I find your presentations always informative.
Well, Barbara, I'll answer to anything. The youngest of 7, I'll just,
Your sister's Barbara.
at least you're not yelling at me, it's fine.
I'll make sure I tell her that. Don't yell at her. Linda, as always, I find your presentations informative. And as usual, it's a breath of fresh air to hear we're moving in the right direction. So I know it's a lot of heavy lifting. Thank you very much, because this is important stuff, and sometimes it's overlooked.
Okay. I have a couple of general comments. First of all, I think the high school deserves a little bit more credit than we've given it so far tonight. One of the ways to kind of look at the scores, the MCAS scores, is to calculate a ratio of advanced to needs improvement plus warning. Most students should be achieving it or scoring at a proficient level. If we're not getting those kids to proficiency, that means we're not connecting with them, and that would be the needs improvement and warning category. And whether they're Gen Pop or high needs doesn't really matter. We need to be connecting with those students. Kind of along the same lines, the kids who are achieving at that advanced level, we clearly are getting through to, and the district and the kids are kind of going above and beyond what the state has set out as kind of a standard level of achievement, a proficiency level, and those really need to be celebrated. When you look at the ratios of the advanced to the needs improvement plus warnings. CHS in the ELA is a 19-to-1 ratio. That is amazing. Districts don't get ratios like that. In math, it's 10-to-1, and in science, it's 6-to-1. And both the math and the science, while they're not quite where the ELA is, those trends are going in absolutely the right direction. In fact, the science, I think, just a couple of years ago was like a 0.5-to-1. There are real improvements being made at the high school level, and I think you don't see those kind of ratios at the elementary schools and middle schools, and there's plenty of room for discussion about why that might be the case. But there is no question that the kids who are coming out of the high school are ready to go on and be successful, at least by the standards that we've set for them. And I think really we need to recognize that the work that's being done, especially at the high school, is really, really impressive. One of the things that it's there this year, it's been there for quite a long time, are the differences in those ratios between ELA and math and science. And the kids aren't changing, right? So if we're not getting the same ratio of advanced to needs improvement and warning in math that we are in English, it's probably not the kids' issue, right? That's something that we need to look at as a district. And again, the trends are generally going in good directions. But the kids don't get stupider when they walk across the hallway to the science classroom. And if we're not seeing those improvements, we need to be taking a hard look. That's where the effort needs to be focused. Finally, I think on the broadest level, we as a district and we as a committee have to do a better job of linking the initiatives that we undertake in the classroom to the outcomes. I mean, it is boring and sometimes tedious to talk about these scores and how we're getting there, and even some of the things that we're doing, some of the initiatives that we're undertaking. But that's what we're here for. right? That's the core mission of this committee, is to prepare these kids, and we need to. I'm not seeing it right now. I think it's something that we all need to do. We need to work harder at and be more explicit about that. When we change a reading program or when we change a science program, we need to talk about how that affects what we see in these scores. Because if we're not, then we're doing the kids a disservice, and we're just kind of churning. So as we go forward, I think that's something that's a kind of a point of emphasis I'd like to see us be more focused on as we go forward.
One thing I'd like to comment on, kind of relates to that, is when most of us went to school, well, you don't belong in my group, but when I went to school, I had one teacher in the classroom, and if you wanted extra help, you stayed after school. If you listen to what presented in terms of support for our kids now, we have kids, we have multiple people in most classrooms, where at least where it's needed, and we have all kinds of support people with different titles in terms of tutors and coaches and all this sort of thing. The kids have support that's unbelievable when you compare it to 15 years ago. There was almost no extra support at that point. So the progress that we've made in supporting kids is tremendous, and it costs a lot of money,
Right.
but we're providing a service that we should have been providing for a
Not
long
only
time.
it costs a lot of money, but the results show. I mean, we're
Yeah.
top 50 in the state.
Yeah.
I mean, that means something, so that, the oars are rowing in the right direction, and nationally ranked to some extent, being talked about, so to your point, I get what Mike's saying, but, I see real progress, and numbers don't lie. We're moving in the right direction as far as what we stand, how we stand in the state of Massachusetts.
One thing I have to ask, when we had paraprofessionals in, we had a whole army of English people, we had one math person, and then you mentioned, I think that night there was one math person.
Maybe, yep.
Okay, and I think you mentioned this last year that we were putting a lot of math people in. Is the support in math equal to the support in English?
Actually, the support in math is more than the support in English.
Okay,
So
because I
we
didn't
have-
get that impression earlier, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Because what those interventionists, you have math interventionists,
Yeah.
and you have literacy interventionists, so they're
Okay.
two different
So
people.
it just happened to be who was here that
Correct, and
night,
then
I
you have
guess.
math
Right.
coaches, and then there's only one writing coach.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't get that impression
Yeah.
at first. All right, thank you very much. Good job.
Okay, moving on, what's that?
Well, you already did the vote,
Just kidding. Long discussion with no vote at the end, that's all.
No vote, just a
sorry.
kind of report of progress.
All right.
Fourth item on the agenda this evening is just some draft financial reports for the month of September. So we finished the first quarter of September. Last Friday actually fell, the 30th was the last day of the month, so that was also a payroll and a warrant day for us. So these are just the preliminary reports that were printed. It takes us a week or so to go through and do some reconciliation. These are the first reports that are being printed out of the new munis now that we're on the combined town munis. And as Joanna and I were reviewing them over the weekend, there's a couple of pockets where you'll see a person's being mischarged to the wrong account and things. So it'll take us a week or so to kind of get that cleaned up. But overall, our first glance at the accounts for the year, the local budget accounts, everything is, in order. The conversion went very well. What we will do is clean up some of those adjusting entries just to move individuals to the correct reporting areas. And then we'll produce a revised report for you. It would be ready to actually schedule within the next week or so if we wanted to schedule a finance subcommittee meeting and actually kind of talk through the account structure. We've only had 2 payrolls for teachers at this point, so it's very difficult to do projections, but when we do encumber payroll, we can get a general sense of kind of where we are financially. So I'd recommend we could do that. And the other report that Joanna did put together at the very end, the last page of this financial report, was just, she continued the format that Michelle had put together, just listing all the various grant revolving funds in the district. You will notice a lot of accounts either have, the projections haven't been completed yet for the year, the estimated receipts are not finalized. So I'm not concerned at all with any of the negative balances that appear in the far right-hand corner of the screen. You know, the first one, just an example, the school nutrition account. You know, we have anticipated receipts, and that's just based on the previous year receipts. You have your cash to date, but they actually encumber, their purchases and things for the year in the encumbrance column, and obviously they haven't taken in revenue for anything more than a month for the year, so that's not a concern to me. And as we do go through the course of the next month or two, we revise some revenue estimates. When we actually get some of the final grant awards in, like at this point in time, we actually don't have our circuit breaker allocation still, so you'll see that's a blank cell. We'll continue to feed into this spreadsheet. And what I have talked with Joanna about also, which I felt was a very useful document in the past, was almost a crosswalk type document that will go behind this. That'll just give a little description of each fund code, what the various salary accounts and supply accounts are used for. This is kind of a quick and dirty kind of cheat sheet to just let you know where things are, but we will add that in for future reports. But I've been indicating I was going to get that out to the committee, so I wanted to get you that just so you can see where our starting points are. And like I said, within a week or so, we'll be able to clean up some of those month-end entries, and could certainly schedule a finance subcommittee to start looking at this, and even talking about just the level of reporting you'd like to receive, frequency, things of that sort. I had anticipated doing the first quarter is always difficult just because, again, it's September. We really haven't been in session over the summer. But the second quarter, you'll actually get a full report as well as a projection. Third quarter, the same. And then right after third quarter, usually you actually do monthly at that point. So these reports will start coming to you monthly. But happy to answer any questions. Again, this is just the preliminary numbers, but we wanted to get them out to you so you at least could see where we're standing. But all in all, we're actually very happy with the conversion and how that's worked so far. That was a huge undertaking, and I think our reporting is going to be obviously much better going forward.
Budget related, not specifically to Munis.
Yep.
I had asked for some reporting on IT spending over the last
Okay.
12 months with some monthly reporting going forward.
Sure.
And I just haven't received any of it yet. So,
Okay. Did you ask Bill or Joanna?
Joanna.
Okay. I'll follow up with her in the morning.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. We have our first IT
Yeah,
capital.
next week. Yep.
So.
I'll shoot you an email.
Just a couple of things. We're 200% on the center PSPs. That's related to the kindergarten, I assume.
Which page are you on?
Looks like page 9.
Can you say what a PSP is for the audience? And me.
Basically an aid.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's one, obviously, all the negative accounts we're going to look into. What it looks like, if you look at the dollar amount, it's basically an extra para. It's an
Right.
extra
And
FTE.
that's,
And it could be a budget coding issue, because you'll see, like, there's another account two above it that actually, you're projecting a $40,000 deficit in that
right.
account. 2 lines up, you're projecting a $40,000 surplus. So it could be an issue of a para position even moved from one school to another, and the budget hasn't caught up to that. But we will go through and actually reconcile all of those accounts.
okay, the other one was a couple of nurse accounts at Center and Harrington. Did we add somebody or increase hours?
We didn't for the nursing. Which page would that be on?
That's on 16. They're at like 108 and 107. I mean, you know, we're still at 92% overall, but I'm just wondering if it's reflecting a shift.
Okay, so I'm on page 16. Which one?
The Center and Harrington nurse lines.
Yeah, I'd have to do
Okay.
a deep dive for you into those accounts. We haven't added any staff. I don't think there's actually been many nurses that have moved. Again, it could be a coding issue.
Yeah.
If you look at Harrington, and again, we do encumber the nurses' salaries, so
Right.
that's pretty hard number, but you're, projecting a deficit of 6,200, but then 2 lines up.
Yeah, again,
you're over 6. So it might
overall,
be
the
body.
category is okay, so,
Right.
but it would be interesting if we could actually see personnel shifts through the lens of the budget.
You know, I completely agree with you. But that's the level of detail we're going back through now.
Right. The other thing is, this 9,300 on page 19, the last thing, tuition non-public schools. That is a category I don't recall seeing in the past.
You're on page 19.
The very last thing. Tuition for non-public schools.
That's special education, out-of-district tuition.
Okay.
In previous years, the fund code structure for SPED was separate from the local budget. When we converted over the town, we're actually all in the same kind
Okay.
of report at this point. But that's the line item for out-of-district tuition.
Well, it's very, okay, that's fine.
We haven't, you can see
Yeah.
at this point, you're in deficit as well, but we haven't
But-
done the crossover to circuit breaker.
Exactly.
Right.
The only other thing is on the grants and revolving funds. There's no encumbrances for the turf fields, right? And we know there's going to be payments.
Right. We typically, the encumbrances would be if an actual, for a revolving or grant fund, when you actually put up a purchase order for that, that's where the encumbrance column's coming in.
Okay.
If you look up to, for like transportation, we do encumber the PO to like North Reading Transportation.
Right.
So that's where that encumbrance is coming from. On the turf field account, we actually only do the encumbrance or pay the invoice when the bill comes.
It's only the actual payment that gets
Right,
reflected.
that's when it gets applied.
Okay.
So, I think it's a, again, a good snapshot in time. Give us a week or so to refine some of those numbers in the larger account. And again, you've had a lot of activity in September with new staff coming on board, leaving. So we need to do that reconciliation, and we can certainly set up a finance subcommittee.
Okay, and for that, the turf fields, do you know how recent that income number is?
That
Does
actually-
reflect only August or even
That didn't
July?
have any of the September income in it
Yeah,
yet,
okay,
too.
that's what I thought.
Most of these accounts don't have the September revenue in.
Okay.
Those only went in last week.
Yeah.
So that's going to be actually a catch-up. Once the town gets it, they need to post it, but that's not included in these numbers. So I would just ask you to accept this report of progress, no vote needed, and we'll schedule that subcommittee in a week or so.
Okay.
Okay? Next item of the evening, you have two field trip requests for your consideration and approval. The first one is the Chelmsford High School cross-country team going to a meet in New York. And then the second field trip is the McCarthy Middle School kids and staff going to their Quebec trip. I believe we actually have the teacher from the Quebec trip with us this evening. Thank you for sitting through the meeting. But we recommend these two field trips for your approval.
I make a motion to allow the cross-country team to go to New York, and I make a motion to allow McCarthy students and staff to go to Quebec.
Second.
To both?
To both. Second to both motions.
Any discussion on either one? Let's vote on them separately so we know what we're doing. Okay, first vote will be on the cross-country trip to New York. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposition? That's 4-0. And then second vote on the trip to Quebec City. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposition? 4-0. Okay. Do we have any, do you have anything else you want to do now?
No, just if we can take that motion up at the end.
Yeah. Do we have any liaison reports?
Real quickly, I went to the first meeting of the CHS PTO the other night. There was a question about if we're doing anything to generate rental income from the turf fields, or just more broadly from the football stadium. And I just wanted to throw it out there for discussion. The turf field committee, as I understand it, is dissolved, right?
That's my understanding.
So, I mean, if we wanted to have a discussion about this, what's the best way to go about doing it?
How about trying to find out if there's like excess field?
No, I think what they were thinking was, can we sell banners or something around the field? I mean,
Oh, so not the actual rental of the field
no,
itself?
not so much the rental of the field itself.
Or
but-
like
The original plans had design on parts of the fields.
Right.
And I think that part of the question was, are we doing anything about that?
The short answer is no, not that I'm aware of. We could certainly have a discussion about it. I'm not opposed to looking into it, I just didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I don't know what the best way to go about it is.
And this is primarily more like selling advertising space?
Yeah, advertising's been controversial here, but I think what the PTO was saying was that they'd be open to it. And so maybe it's time to have that conversation again.
Okay. Can I think about a forum or a way to kind of bring that up?
Yeah.
And report back to you?
Yeah.
Are they interested in the sense of doing it? Selling advertising?
I didn't hear that, but
Just a source of income for
I
somebody?
think but if we have an ongoing conversation about it, we might pitch it back to them. I mean, I think they're going to try some novel fundraising ideas this year. And I just thought it was interesting that they seemed to be open to the concept.
Do you remember how long the sign sales were for?
3.
There's going to be business coming up with regard to the field regularly, and I don't know where that goes back to all the time. I mean, I don't think it should be Scott's responsibility alone to
Yeah,
take care of
to-
renegotiating
Right.
that contract, and, maybe,
It's an awful lot for one person to handle.
Yeah.
Off the cuff, would you ever want to think about appointing like an ad hoc committee of the school committee and have like just a limited exposure?
You might want
Few
to
meetings.
broaden it beyond the confines of the school committee. I mean, maybe there should be a school committee member on it, but you might want to, ask the CBA if they have suggestions, or ask for a member from the PTO, or I don't think it has to be exclusively a school committee thing. We would need to approve any advertising, but if you're talking about putting a group together to kind of go out and either try to generate.
I don't know if that's what he was
Business, or-
saying, as opposed to just receiving the information. Are you suggesting that a committee be put together that is going out and hustling or selling advertising?
No, I guess, to be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, I hear that there's a desire to at least look at what's happening now and are there additional opportunities for revenue. Where it would go, I don't know. I don't know if maybe that committee, if we wanted to, could get together and look at it. I think it would be important to have a school committee member probably on that to kind of serve as a liaison, to just be informed and know what's going back and forth. You then still get down to the question of, who's going to be responsible for going out and doing it, what are the expectations around revenue? You don't want to have a forecast you can't hit.
Right.
Maybe as a starter, I could actually just pull a report together that just kind of shows what's currently taking place. And then I could present that to the committee, give you some time to kind of think about where you might want to go with it. And then we could always establish either a working group or just set up a special meeting and discuss that. But I think we need to be clear about what the expectations
Yeah,
are,
right.
what we're really hoping to accomplish, and then, convene the right people to really do the work.
As part of that information, you'll be able to know what the debt service is on the existing.
Yeah,
bond.
I'll do a full report on that.
Good.
Yeah. That'd be okay?
Yeah, that sounds like a good step forward.
anything else in terms of liaison reports?
I just have a quick one. I went to my first buy-in PTO. It was a good meeting. Mr. Fredette was there. It was a large crowd. A lot of good things came up. This year they're going to be selling handbags. Like, I don't know a lot about bags, but if I did, they're pretty nice bags. And not doing candles this year, which I will say I was disappointed. But overall, it was a good meeting, and there was a lot of participation. And Stacy does a really good job of keeping those guys together, and they had a lot. And I'll be going to my South Row meeting this Thursday on the 6th. So.
Okay. In terms of items that we need to talk about, I guess, we need to do something on our goals pretty soon before it's Christmas. Not that I'm excited about it, but how should we go about that? We need to have, the other thing is, do we need to have a workshop before town meeting, because we were talking about coordinating our presentation.
I don't think we have to do that.
I think we do,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing that we probably need to have a policy meeting before too long, because Going back to the high school handbook, if I remember correctly, there were things there that related to policy, and there were probably other things that have popped up. It's our favorite thing. Just, those were things that I made note of during the course of the meeting. I don't know if there are
When you
other
say a
things.
workshop, were you thinking public input as well? Or trying to answer public questions?
I think we need to answer questions.
Or,
I think we need to let people come and ask questions.
or were you thinking more about just kind of getting a presentation together on our, kind of
I'd
getting
feel
our
more
own?
comfortable if we had some idea of how we're going
Together.
to make presentations that night, just so we don't have three of us say the same thing, or even say something that might detract from yours or from Sal's or mine.
We need a clear message.
Yeah.
A united message,
Yeah,
and I think we need to rehearse it a little bit.
Yeah, and so then if we take that approach, then we're just going to expect to answer a lot of questions at town meeting.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, that,
they're going to happen anyway.
of
yeah.
course, and that could be the public input portion of it, I think. We need to have another one, I think, before all is said and done, and town meeting might be the appropriate place to do that.
Is there, just procedurally, is there like a pre-town meeting in the fall?
Yes,
There is.
next week. I think.
There is, but it tends to be mostly just the town manager kind of laying out the warrant articles.
Yeah.
It is typically, I want to say lightly attended. Maybe about a third of the town meeting reps typically
maybe.
go, and it typically only lasts a few hours.
Last year, there were very few questions.
Yeah, I think this is a different thing. This question of full day K and the plan that has been put forward.
It is frustrating because it helps to understand if you're there before
Right.
you get to town meeting. So the people who are there already know the answer to the questions that come up initially at town meeting, but it's not going to change.
But we could have hours of questioning just on our proposal. And given the fact that the pre-town meeting is not always well attended, that maybe we shouldn't plan on trying to take care of everything there. Maybe we should just gear up and be ready to really dig down into the details at town meeting itself.
It's the 12th.
I don't disagree with you at all. I just wonder if there is going to be one. I'll communicate with Paul.
Yeah.
I think it might be beneficial for me, or at least someone, to be there, to just not have a situation come up or start to
What was it?
fester, gain steam that,
What was the date?
The 12th.
next Wednesday.
'Cause there are a couple of vocal, long-standing town meeting reps that are going to be there that are not pro full day kindergarten. What did you say, the 12th? I'll try to go. I'm going to.
It's 7 o'clock, and it's usually, I think it's at the North Town Hall.
Yeah. Again, it tends to be more kind of an information session. The questions are more an opportunity for the town meeting reps to kind of understand the issues rather than argue
Right.
them out, pro and con. That's what town meeting is for.
Right. No, I don't disagree. I'm just wondering if, even for clarity, if a question came up, just to have someone there to head it off that
I
night,
think for sure you should be there.
as opposed to letting it, kind of roll over, so.
Well, the presence, even if nothing happens, your presence is important.
Yep. Okay. With regard to goals, internally, our admin team is working on goals to shortly be presented to you for like our work for the year. I was supposed to follow up with Dorothy Presser from MASC and see if we wanted to do another working session with her on your goals. Maybe just suggesting, if you have some time over the next couple of days, maybe we could get together and actually kind of report out on the
Yeah.
progress of the goals for last year.
Yeah.
And then just see if, do we want to have Dorothy back in to continue that dialogue around goal setting and governance? Or do you want to put goals in place again for this year yourself without her?
Well, I kind of think we should see yours first. I mean, not to make this your problem, but
Well, so we're on the same page in major
exactly,
issues. yeah.
Exactly. But maybe we could. I mean, we might almost be able to do it all the same night. Especially if we decide to kind of go, if we work off of last year's goals as opposed to
Right.
doing another workshop.
Right.
That doesn't mean we can't try to put some goals in, and then, once we get on the other side of town meeting, maybe it would be helpful to have another workshop.
Right.
Just to kind of keep us up to date. They have an entire governance program. They'll do more than just talk about goals
Right.
if we want to do a broader discussion.
Why don't you and I look at dates and
We'll do that.
rather than take more time now.
Okay.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to reschedule the next regular meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee from Tuesday, October 18th to Wednesday, October 19th at 7 o'clock at Chelmsford Public Schools Administration Building.
I make a motion to reschedule October 18th school committee meeting to October 19th.
Is there a second?
Second. I wasn't sure if you're done, sorry.
Is there any discussion? I know most of you responded, I think, to
I
Jay.
very much appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
4-0. Is there any executive session tonight?
After this, yeah. But we have to adjourn
Yeah.
first.
Is there any further business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye.
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 4-0.
4-0.
Thought you tried to vote. I was like.